What do you mean by upheld in that context?
You know what?
Because
I'm about to kick you out of here. In fact, I'm about to ban you from this server. Not kick you out, ban you. That's how pissed I am with you. Because you're such an intellectually deceitful person. You want to tell me you're a Christian. I think you're an atheist troll, is what I think you are. But I'll just assume for the sake of argument that you're just a stupid Catholic. If you look at the moon on a cloud-free night where it's bright, you seeing the moon and having rational acquisition of that as well are both aspects of God's revelatory actions. When Adam opened up his eyes and he looked around, his ability simply to be a rational being itself was a revelatory action of God.
no, what I don't understand is if you've conceded that your cognitive faculties can malfunction, right? And you also presumably are not telling us by what method you can distinguish when they malfunction and when they don't.
You're not understanding. If you do not start whatever fact that we invoke, if we do not start with God as the final reference point for whatever proximate fact that we start with, then it is no fact at all. Now, is God your ultimate reference point for any proximate fact that you start with?
Well, see, this is again turning the tables towards me.
No, it's answering your question by showing you it applies equally to yourself as it does me. We will
Sure.
either, and listen carefully, the moment Adam became conscious, God made him God conscious, that this was God's creation, that he was a creation of God. Okay? So in the garden before the fall of man, Adam and Eve were conscious that God was the creator, and everything they saw was a creative act, including their rational apprehension of that. There was no disconnect in Adam's mind that all facts around him were created facts by God. Okay? And we have to have that same attitude too. But you see, in our modern age where people have turned and have adopted atheistic thinking, even people who profess Christianity have adopted atheistic thinking. Okay, for example, are you familiar with the fact that the apologetic of the Catholic Church is rooted in Thomas Aquinas?
Yeah,
Are you
I
aware
am.
of that? Okay, are you aware that it is rooted in Greek philosophy?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with
That's
philosophy.
right. It does not start with the revelatory actions of God. It starts with the autonomous man. Aquinas and his five proofs, his apologetic could be as powerful as it was, and I don't mean to diminish how smart he was, because he was a very smart guy. If we distill his apologetic down, there's probably a God, and the God that probably exists is probably the God of the Bible. Now, that's if we were to distill Aquinas's apologetic down, that's what it would be. Do you understand? Okay. Okay. Would you not mute your microphone, Corbin? Okay. So do you understand that is the Roman Catholic apologetic?
No, I do understand exactly what you're saying. What my problem
Right. No,
is,
no, 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 no. That's not an answer to my question. Do you understand that the Catholic apologetic is that God probably exists, and the God that probably exists is probably the Christian God? That is the Catholic apologetic. Are you aware of that?
I'm fine to concede that. I'm willing to.
Okay. Is that your outlook?
Is my outlook evidentialism? I would consider
I
that,
didn't
yes.
ask you. I didn't ask you if it was evidentialism. I said, is your position that God probably exists, and the God that probably exists is probably the God of Christianity?
Yeah, I would consider that my outlook.
Okay, well then you do not believe in the true God. Okay,
So this
okay.
is what I am.
I'm not done yet. Okay, because that's not the God of Christianity. The God of Christianity is not the God that probably exists. The God of Christianity is the one that necessarily cannot exist, and every fact must reference him as the ultimate and necessary precondition. In other words, God's existence is not only necessary, it's necessary for any other fact. So
including the existence of probabilities.
yeah. Okay. So what I've just demonstrated to you is that the Catholic apologetic and reasoning toward God is anti-biblical. It is. It is. It is. It is a. If you say God probably exists and He's probably the Christian God, that is what we would call a finite God. A God that probably exists is not the same thing as the God that necessarily exists. Do you understand
No,
the
I
difference?
understand what you're saying. I definitely
Right.
do.
So you don't believe. So you do not believe that God's existence is necessary in and of Himself, and it's the necessary starting point or final reference point in order to invoke the actuality of any fact. So I've
No,
just explained to you. Know what?
I don't think that that's true.
You don't think what is true.
The transcendental argument that you mentioned.
Oh well, then you are outside the camp of faith. Okay. Because the God of the Bible is nowhere in the Bible does it say God probably exists and that the God who probably exists is the God of the Bible. The Bible teaches that God's existence is absolute. Okay, it's unconditionally non-dependent. Okay, God's existence is in no sense, shape, or form probabilistic. Okay,
So
so you do not believe in the God of the Bible. You think you do, but you are believing in an Aristotelian type of God, because that's where Thomas Aquinas got his reasoning from. He got it from Aristotle. Okay, now that's not even a debatable issue. The bottom line is simply this: you believe that God probably exists.
yes,
That is not the God of the Bible. You believe in a false God that you're calling the God of the Bible.
okay. If you're saying that I don't believe in the God of the Bible, what this means is that you have read the Bible at the minimum, understood its message using your cognitive faculties, right? And then have come to the conclusion that the God I say I believe in doesn't sorry, is not consistent with what you understand the Bible to say. But you've already conceded, right, that your cognitive faculties malfunction. So how is your reasoning not
No, you're not. You're
probabilistic?
not. You're not. You're not understanding. Okay. You're making such a monumental error. I'm not conceding that. I am conceding that God is and that He has revealed Himself and that He has instituted providentially a pro, a a basic reliability for human cognition, and in certain instances there can be some malfunction, but there's not a malfunction at the basic reliability, just in certain instances maybe due to illness. Okay, the fact of the matter is you could not even refer to a malfunction of cognition at all unless you presuppose that there was some basic reliability of cognition. Do you understand the dilemma that you're in?
No, I perfectly understood. I perfectly
You can't you
concede.
can't you cannot talk about anything being delusional or mistaken unless you presuppose that at some level there's a basic reliability of cognition. Because if you don't presuppose that, you couldn't identify anything at any time, anywhere is delusional or not the product of proper cognitive functioning. So your position is self-annihilating. Now, you need to repent of the false God that you believe in, because the God of the Bible is not the one that probably exists. This is an insult to God. God presents Himself not as probably existing, but as the necessary ultimate reference point for all things that begin. In other words, everything that you think of, you invoke, you reason about, um, everything will have to reference God as the ultimate reference point. Otherwise, none of these things can be presented as actual or intelligible. So
You could
you're either gonna start with the necessary God as the necessary first principle for anything else, or you have no grounds for predication. Unless you start with the absolute God of Scripture, that he has absolutely revealed himself through natural and special revelation, and that he absolutely and necessarily exists, as opposed to he probably exists. Unless you start with God's revelation, then you cannot even predicate. Do you know what I mean by predicate?
yeah.
Good. You couldn't predicate on the idea that God probably exists. You couldn't predicate. So you are doomed in terms of your ability to reason or invoke anything, unless okay. You're gonna get moved. Disconnected him. Okay. So anytime we speak, okay, do you know what an enthymeme is?
Sorry.
Do you know what an enthymeme is? It's an unstated premise
Yeah.
in a given proposition. So whenever we speak, there is always one or more enthymemes in a proposition, unless, of course, we're talking about God. Now, anytime you talk about a dog, a cat, a chair, anything else, okay, it doesn't matter what your proximate starting point is. If that proximate starting point, whatever it is, does not presuppose the necessary God of creation and that he has revealed himself, okay, then you can't have any facts.
Okay. So I this is where I really don't see why you as a presuppositionalist would miss this point. And let me make it clear. There is a true dichotomy. Either God exists or either he does not, right? And this is a true dichotomy, right? So whether he exists or he doesn't exist, one of them is necessarily the case, and nobody disagrees with it, right? So when someone says that God probably exists, right, what we are saying is ultimately no one has the ability to overcome the problem. I'm not finished, Parakeet. I noticed you unmuted your Merrick. So ultimately, what we're saying is, right, and I didn't want to get into my religion, but I did because I don't want to be accused of being dishonest or whatever, right? So what we are saying is, or what people who are saying is that we are leaving open the door that our inferences could be incorrect. They don't appear to be incorrect. They don't appear to be
Hold on,
problematic.
hold on a second. Hold on a second. You're being very unclear and ambiguous here. Okay. Either every fact that you invoke is going to reference God as the ultimate reference point, or not. Okay, this is a true dichotomy. Either every fact that you invoke, that the fact in question or proposition is extant and it possesses intelligibility in terms of the ultimate reference point, or you don't. Which do you do?
Well, to invoke God as the ultimate starting point would be to beg the question. So I don't beg the question. I
Okay, all
go,
right, all right. Okay, you're so naive. You're so naive and gullible. And you see, when you hang around the atheist sophists, okay, the Bible says bad company corrupts good morals. Okay, you read Psalm 1. It says, "How blessed is the man who does not
I'm not an
stand in the
atheist.
way of
I'm
scare."
not an
Okay,
atheist.
I didn't say that, but when you hang around these sophists, they will cloud your mind with sophism. Now, let me make it very clear. Okay, if somebody is going to say that is begging the question, then this evaluation cuts your own head off. It's because you're going to be either presupposing an ultimate reference point or not. So if you say it begs the question and therefore it's to be thrown out, then what your position then is to invoke facts in terms of their actuality and intelligibility, that those facts, in order to invoke them as actual and intelligible, will not have anything referencing as a final reference point. Do you understand that?
No, I don't understand why.
Okay.
And
Now listen to me carefully. I'll go over it again to you. Okay. In order to understand your faulty reasoning, you have to understand what you're not accepting first. Okay. So in the Christian worldview, right? Whatever proximate fact that we invoke in terms of its actuality or intelligibility, it will have to reference either explicitly or implicitly God as the ultimate reference point. Now, if you say that that's begging the question, then you're going to destroy your ability to make any propositional claims because it wouldn't have an ultimate reference point. The assertions, therefore, not having an ultimate reference point would emerge and be invoked out of a void.
I don't see the entailment between
Okay,
not
okay.
not
You're
begging.
not. Okay. We're gonna have to go over this again, okay? Because when we're talking about the ultimate reference point, we're not talking about any ordinary fact. If you reject in principle that we're not that if you say that when I say that every proximate fact, in order for it to be a fact and possess intelligibility, must reference God and the God of the Bible, right? Ontologically. And if you say that's begging the question, are you saying that in principle that proximate facts or temporal facts do not necessitate for their actuality an ultimate reference point?
Yes, insofar as it's
Okay, that's not coherent. That is catastrophic epistemically and ontologically. It's because if you don't have an ultimate reference point, okay, what is metaphysically primary, then the proximate fact that you're invoking, you have already acknowledged that it is not the ultimate reference point, which means it would be of a second order. Okay. Now, before I continue, do you understand that?
no, I don't. I still don't
Okay.
understand.
A fact, any fact that is invoked will either be ultimate, okay, absolute, and self-contained and non-derivative, or not.
So
Okay.
you
Let's say
denied
the
root vector.
first.
Yeah,
Let's
let me just finish. Okay. Do you understand the true dichotomy I have just now presented to you?
I do, but aren't you
So,
begging the question against
no, you're
against?
not. You're not understanding. Again, when you keep on saying begging the question, you have been drinking from the tainted water of the atheist sophists. Okay. Now,
I am not an atheist. I don't
I
appreciate you
didn't. I
calling me
didn't.
an
I
atheist.
did. I didn't accuse you of being an atheist. Have you been recently, and any time recently, been in conversations with Jack Angstrom?
I've talked with Jack a lot of times. Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm correct. Okay.
I don't see
Now,
how that makes me an atheist.
no, I didn't say. Did I say you were an atheist?
But you keep saying that I
Did
have
I say you
drank.
were an atheist? Did I
You
say you were
said
an
I drank.
atheist? I said you're drinking from the tainted waters of the atheist sophists. I didn't
can
say
we
you were
can
an
we
atheist.
can
Now,
we get
listen to
back
me
to
carefully.
the point? We have fact
Listen,
A.
yeah, right. Okay. So for any fact that is invoked, okay, any fact that is invoked it'll either be dependent or not dependent. Okay, that's a true dichotomy. Any fact that is invoked will either be ultimate, absolute, and eternal and self-contained, or not. Now, so when we talk about the ultimate reference point being ultimate, we could say that it is metaphysically primary or the first principle of existence. Now, in order for something to exist at all, it will either be a se, it'll be self-contained and non-derivative, or not. If it's not non-derivative, then it is derivative. It will, by definition, be of a second order. Are we clear now?
Yes, that's a true dichotomy. I agree.
Okay, now, if you say that when I say to you that whatever proximate fact that you invoke, and I'm referring to derivative facts, dependent facts, It's derivative of what? Well, the answer is the ultimate reference point, right? Now, if you say that the fact in question can be invoked as actual intelligible without the necessity of referencing the ultimate reference point, right? Then the fact in question itself would have to be the ultimate reference point, or it couldn't exist.
Or there could be brute facts, which for some
No,
reason
you're
you're.
okay. Okay, well, if there's a brute fact, you have denied the existence of God.
I don't see how.
Okay, I
I
will
don't see how
explain it
that's
to.
enough.
I will explain it to you. Okay, in the Christian worldview, other
No,
than
in
God,
your Christian worldview, not
no,
just in.
no, no, in the Christian worldview in the Bible. Okay,
Okay.
in the Christian worldview, all facts other than God Himself are created facts. Okay, are we clear on that?
I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't see how that's
Okay,
necessarily.
then you are fundamentally denying the central pillar of Christianity, and
No,
that
I am
is
a Christian. I've said this before.
listen to me carefully. Don't overtalk me. You think you're smart, you're not. You're actually quite stupid. Okay? Listen carefully. In the Christian worldview, there is nothing that can exist that is not a created fact. Have you read Colossians 1?
I've
Have
read the
you
whole book of Colossians many times.
Okay, okay. Now, in there it says that Christ is the creator and sustainer of all things. Hebrews 30, it says Christ upholds all things by the power of his will. It says that
Genesis
Jesus,
1:1.
in the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. In John chapter 1, it says all things were made by him and through him. Okay? So that means that everything that is not God is a created fact. Okay? Are we clear on that?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so if somebody hands me a gizmo tomorrow, I may not know the inner operations of the gizmo and how it accomplishes what it does. But what I can know is that what I'm holding in my hand is simply a reformulation by smart people of God's creative facts. Okay, that there's not anything that is inside there operating with other elements inside of the gizmo that is not a creative fact. So every Christian must hold to the creator creature distinction, or as I put it sometimes, the creator creation distinction. Every fact, every particular that is not God is a created fact. Are we clear on that before we move on?
Sure.
Okay. Now, the opposite of a created fact is a fact that exists without any ultimate identifiable reasons. Okay?
Brute facts.
That's right. So the opposite of a created fact is a brute fact. In God's world, there are no brute facts. No brute facts exist in the Christian worldview.
So if you deny brute facts, you hold to the PSR, right?
Now, listen. Again, you've been drinking from the dirty, tainted waters of the atheist sophists. We
I
can
don't know why
discuss
you keep it.
there are because I know that you have been associating with them and listening to their bilge. Okay,
What's PSR?
the principle of sufficient reason. Now, do you know there are different versions of the PSR?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, good. So there's not just one version of the PSR. Now, all you're simply doing is you are regurgitating the sophist reasoning of the atheist cockroaches that you've been hanging out with. That is a big mistake. That is very unwise for you to do, especially because when you're following a cult and you are not grounding yourself in the word of God. When you step out from the umbrella of God's word, okay, you now make yourself susceptible to the deceptions of Satan and his agents, including the atheist sophists. Now, in the Christian worldview, there are no brute facts. Okay, everything exists in virtue of God Himself and His self-contained eternal nature. Okay.
So
Now,
then it follows that you hold to the PSR, right?
why do you keep on repeating that?
Because it's a dichotomy. It's either brute facts
No,
or the principle of sufficient reason.
no, it's not brute facts or the principle of sufficient reason. It's either everything is a created fact or it's not a created fact, which would mean it would be a brute fact. You see,
So
you're not thinking, you are not, you see, this is the problem when you listen to people who are atheists, who are armchair philosophers, who are in fact sophists. They will pervert your mind. Your mind has already been perverted by the faulty epistemology and philosophy and apologetic of Roman Catholicism. I've already shown that to you. You admitted to me that you believe what the Catholic Church says, that God probably exists and it's probably the God of the Bible. Well, that's a finite God. And
I
that
don't see how.
and because God's existence in the Bible is not probabilistic. His existence is absolutely necessary for everything. You couldn't invoke anything without God's eternality. Now, this is the reason why you see when you start to drink the dirty waters of pagan philosophy, this is how you got corrupted. This is how Eastern
When
Orthodoxy got started. This is how
when
Catholicism got started because they started drinking from the dirty waters of Greek philosophy. Now, you are either going to start in your thinking, okay? You're either going to start in your thinking consciously that God is the ultimate reference point or not for
when
everything.
Darth says that you can't invoke anything without God, he means he doesn't mean that someone can't speak of things without believing in God. He means they couldn't explain any of the things they're speaking about without accepting God.
Yeah. So
Okay,
They couldn't
Parakeet, can I
explain it
ask you something?
rationally.
when a
Parakeet,
Christian when
Parakeet,
a
can I?
Christian just please when a Christian invokes anything, if they invoke something that is not God, whatever it is, then God is the ultimate reference point.
Okay, so what you
Now,
just said,
if you
would
do
you
not
agree?
accept that, if you do not accept that, you now have a pagan concept of ontology.
So what you just said, would you agree that that's a proposition?
Yeah, the proposition is God is the necessary precondition
Okay,
of all temporal facts.
okay, so that proposition is either true or not true, correct?
No, it's true. It could not be. It could not be false.
Well, is that proposition either true or false then?
No, it's only true. It couldn't be false.
Why?
Why? It's because God is the necessary precondition for everything.
No, no, no. Why couldn't that proposition either be true or false?
It can't be false. It's not. It's not. It's
Why?
not. Why? Because God cannot possibly be false.
No, no, no. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking why can't that proposition be either true or false?
What proposition?
The proposition that God is a necessity for all facts.
It can't be false
Why?
because then you couldn't invoke any coherency. There would be no intelligibility for anything.
I don't see the entailment between saying that a proposition is either true or false and then saying there can't be any.
Because we're not talking about any proposition. You're making a category error. Okay, you're doing what unbelievers do all the time. That's because you're an unbeliever. All right.
I'm not an unbeliever, but I don't know what's the relevance.
You are an unbeliever. You follow the gospel of Roman Catholicism. The gospel of Roman Catholicism is that you must faithfully perform during your life. You must faithfully practice the sacraments in the hopes that you've done enough that God will finally let you in heaven. That is a false gospel. You are not a Christian. And you do not hold to a biblical view of God. Your God is a finite God. You've already admitted it. You told me that you believe that God probably exists and he's probably the God of the Bible. Well, that conception of God is not what the Bible teaches. The Bible nowhere, you can't show me anywhere in the Bible where it says, you know what, guys, God is the best explanation of what exists. You won't find any biblical writer saying that. Okay? Every biblical writer starts explicitly or implicitly, at square one, God is, and God has created this world, and he has providential oversight of what's going on, and all facts are created by him and sustained by him, and they only possess intelligibility as being a part of his plan. Otherwise, you have, okay, you want to believe that you can have facts without referencing God as the final reference point. But unfortunately, if you don't, if you say, do you believe that you can invoke the intelligibility of any fact without having it explicitly or implicitly reference God as the final reference point?
Yeah, I think so, because otherwise it would
Okay,
assert.
okay, you're an atheist. Guess what?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Yes,
I
you
don't
are an atheist. Let me explain to you why you are. Okay, I know
think I
you
know that.
deny it. Okay, just like when people are in cults, they say, "But I'm not in a cult. I'm not in a cult." Well, here's why. Okay, it's because that is the atheist position: is that there can be one or more facts that are invoked as actual and intelligibility without the necessity of referencing God. Do you believe that any singular fact can be invoked without the necessity of referencing the necessity of God?
Yes, I do, but
That
atheism,
you have now denied the existence of God.
I don't see how that follows, because
You,
atheism is.
it's okay. Listen to me carefully. I don't give a shit that you say I don't see how that follows. That is a tactic that you picked up from Jack Angstreich. Okay, saying I don't see how that follows is not a rebuttal. Okay, and if you had a rebuttal, you would give it. But since you don't have one, you pull the tactics of Jack Angstreich by saying, I don't see the relevance of that. Do you realize that when you drink tainted water, it makes you sick? Okay, listen very carefully. All facts in the Christian worldview exist by virtue of the necessity of God, right?
I don't agree with that. No,
Then you're an atheist.
atheism is not.
You're not under, listen to me carefully. This is how
Well,
dumb, this, don't interrupt me, Parakeet. This is how dumb you are. You are so thick, it's infuriating because the problem is your will is making you dumb. In the Christian worldview, there cannot be any fact that exists independently of God. Do you understand that?
I understand what you say. Yeah,
No, do you understand that's what the Bible teaches?
I don't agree with it. No,
Oh, does Hebrews 3 says Christ upholds all things by the power of his will.
I agree with Hebrews. I don't agree with your
Does he up does Jesus does is there so in other words, every fact that exists only exists because it is upheld by Jesus Christ?
What do you mean by upheld in that context?
You know what?
Because
I'm about to kick you out of here. In fact, I'm about to ban you from this server. Not kick you out, ban you. That's how pissed I am with you because you're such an intellectually deceitful person. You want to tell me you're a Christian. I think you're an atheist troll, is what I think you are. But I'll just assume for the sake of argument that you're just a stupid Catholic. Did are is everything that exists, does it stand by necessity and causal relations to God as the first principle?
no, because there are brute facts.
You're not understanding something. A brute fact is something that has no ultimate identifiable reason why it exists. You are schizophrenic. You cannot claim that you are a Christian and say, or a Catholic, and say there are brute facts. Because if God is the only thing that is eternal, and anything that comes into existence by the power of God, then by definition, they cannot be brute facts.
So then you would have to hold to the principle of sufficient reason,
Okay,
right?
bye-bye. Boom. Ban hammer.
How is this so hard?
No, I didn't just kick him, I banned him. Okay? And for those of you who are not familiar with him, I have dealt with him over many, 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 many months going back. It is the same old psychotic reasoning that we see all the time. He keeps on going back to the principle of sufficient reason. Okay? The point is simply this. If he says that a fact, okay, can exist independently of God, then God is not God. He is denying the creator creation distinction. There's God, and everything else is his creation. And what he wants to do is he wants to throw, this, philosophical nomenclature in there, like, well, that comes, principle sufficient reason. I mean, it's moronic, unbelievable. Any comments?
What are these brute facts? Like, if it's not in causal relation to God, not only what is it in causal relation to, but what even are these brute facts?
A brute fact is a fact that is simply identifying it exists without any ultimate reference point, which means that the brute fact in question exists independently of God. But in the Christian worldview, there are no facts that exist independently of God. So if he says that there's one fact that exists independently of God, then all facts exist independently of God. Because God, by definition, is the creator and sustainer of all things that are not himself.
Seems pretty simple.
Right. But when you are a deceitful person, and I am really beginning to believe, okay, I believe that Canadian Catholic is an atheist troll. I really believe that he's actually an atheist pretending to be a Catholic to F with Christian apologists' minds on Discord. He's like a quasi Jack Angstrike pretending to be Catholic. So you see, this guy, Canadian Catholic, are like flat earthers. They will say anything to be contrarian. And they don't care how convoluted it is. How many times did you hear him go, the principle of sufficient reason, the principle of sufficient reason? And there's not just one version of the principle of sufficient reason. There's several different versions. See, I get angry. I get angry when people are purposely obtuse for the purpose of scuttling the conversation so it ends in a stalemate. And that's what he was doing. And it's the height of dishonesty. What is the point of talking with somebody who does that? They will just throw out nomenclature and vocabulary just as a verbal misdirection so they don't have to concede to the point.
How is he arguing the oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He's picked up the principle of sufficient reason from Jack Angstrike and these atheist sophists in there, where they just have this convoluted reasoning, okay? And he'll say that if we make God the final reference point, that's begging the question. So then facts don't have a final reference point? Then therefore facts come out of the void? There's no reason why anything is?
Darth,
it's just convoluted.